All right, so finally, let's talk about the new animated film from JMS, the creator of Babylon 5, called The Road Home. I will first start with a non-spoiler review, and then I will do a spoiler review. So there will be time codes in the description below if you want to jump around. And if you haven't seen the movie yet, you can just stop watching the podcast once I go into spoilers, and make sure you leave me a like before you do. Thank you very much. So my first thought after watching this film was that it reminded me of the cartoons that movie companies would create based on popular movies after they were released. Like they did one for the Ghostbusters and they did one for The Mask. I think they did one for like Dumb and Dumber as well. And this film was supposed to have all the heart from Babylon 5, but I just didn't feel it. It just felt like a cartoon version of the live action series that I fell in love with. And I know that basically that's what this is. It just felt disconnected. Like it didn't feel like a continuation. It felt like another version. Like I said, like a Saturday morning cartoon version of Babylon 5, not a continuation of the story. And I also thought the jokes were really bad and mostly fell flat. I mean, I know that the humor on Babylon 5 has always been kind of like off and weird, but most of the time I found myself rolling my eyes harder than my 11-year-old does when I try to talk about Ice Spice with her. You know, I mean, when I do my dad jokes and what she feels, like that's what I felt during some of the jokes during this film, because I really didn't think they landed. And it just, a lot of the dialogue and a lot of the way it was written, I mean, it didn't feel complete. It didn't feel right to me. And it didn't really feel like Babylon 5. The animation itself is not bad, but the way it is used sometimes is not great. For instance, I found it hard to discern who certain characters were, like Susan Ivanova and Elizabeth Lockley. There's one scene in particular with one of them that I didn't even know who was in the scene until the next one when they said their name. So basically, I think the only way to tell these two characters apart is that Ivanova has her hair tied back and then Lockley doesn't. But there's a scene with one of them in a bedroom. So it's like, if this was Ivanova, she wouldn't have her hair tied back while in bed. So I don't know if this is Ivanova or if this is Lockley. And I literally could not tell who it was until the next scene when she said her name. So just stuff like that was just really jarring. And then there were other characters like G'Kar, who, while still a bit recognizable, really did not resemble their live action counterparts. And I know that drawing these characters that were created so long ago in animation, it's going to be hit and miss because, you know, you have Uncanny Valley and these were prosthetics that were created in the 90s. And now we're trying to create CGI animation based on that. I know some of the stuff is going to be weird. But there were other characters like Garibaldi I thought looked a little weird. But really, G'Kar was one character that I love and I know a lot of fans love. And he just did not really resemble his counterpart. Like the coloring was off or something. He was really bright. And I don't remember G'Kar ever being that bright. So like I said, it was just kind of weird. And then some of the voice actors, like the person who voiced G'Kar, also did not sound like the originals, which really took me out of the story. The only new addition who I thought did a seamless job was the actor who voiced Dr. Franklin, Phil LaMarr. During his scenes, that sounds like Dr. Stephen Franklin. He did a great job. But also, like, I think the person who voiced Delenn tried to emulate the original performance, but in my opinion, the difference is definitely noticeable. And there's these scenes between Delenn and Sheridan, which are supposed to be really close, and I just did not feel that connection like I did in the series. And it was because it was a different voice. And I understand that the original actors passed away, so like, what are you going to do? But I'm just telling you what I saw and what I heard. And for me, it just didn't work. It just felt, like I said, like a Saturday morning cartoon version where like you couldn't get all the actors from the film. So some of the actors are there and some of the characters are voiced by new actors. That's what this felt like to me over and over again. And also, for me, the plotline itself was not as satisfying, since it really only follows one character, John Sheridan. And that's not really a spoiler to say, but for most of the movie, we're just following what John Sheridan is doing. The other characters from B5 just make like cameo appearances that last anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes of screen time. As a fan of the cast, I was expecting an adventure more similar to the third season of Picard, whereas throughout the season, the characters are brought together. The best part of that season was seeing the TNG crew together, not seeing them individually. So in this movie, we really don't get like that team up scene. I mean, you kind of get it at the end a little bit, but you don't get that scene of like all these different characters coming together once again and solving something new. It's really just all these characters helping John Sheridan deal with what he's dealing with. And I didn't find that as satisfying as it would have been, seeing them all interact together once again. One of the best scenes of the third season of Picard is them in the bar in the last scene of the season. I think everybody said that who watched the season, just because, and that scene has nothing to do with the story. They don't even talk about the story, I think, when they're playing cards. It's just those actors, those characters together in one scene. And that really was what I was looking for. And without really spoiling it, you really just don't get that in this film. The story itself follows John Sheridan as he shifts through time and space. And not only is this premise not really explained in this film, but every franchise right now is doing multiverse stories. Star Trek, the MCU, the DCEU, even Spider-Man has his own Spider-Verse. And then we have that movie, Everything Everywhere All at Once, that won an Oscar. I mean, everything is multiverse right now. So why would you create a new film based on the multiverse? I mean, that is just so played out that the MCU is dying right now because of their use of the multiverse. And so is the DC universe. So why you would write a story about the multiverse, I just don't understand. And JMS has a lot of ties to Spider-Man, so he knows that this stuff is coming down the pipe. So I don't know why you would use the multiverse as a vehicle in this new story, because it just seems really played out to me. And then the ending itself, without spoiling it, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it left me confused at first. Like, I had to think about it, and then I even had to go online and read reviews to see what other people thought of the ending, because there's kind of two ends. I mean, there's like an ending, and then something else happens, and then it's like, wait a minute, what does that mean? Like, what is, without, I mean, I know that I can't really get into it without going into spoilers, and I will talk about it in spoilers, but where the movie actually ends, it left me thinking, like, wait, what, are we here now? Like, what's going on? I really don't understand what just happened. So it was a big swing and a miss for me. The only really thing that I latched onto that I liked in this film was the way they did Zathras. I liked how they developed his character. I liked how he interacted with the characters. His dialogue seemed very much like the character. He was the only one that really seemed like the same character from Babylon 5. I don't know why that was, but that was the only character they nailed, was Zathras. And he's not one of the main characters. I mean, in the story, he kind of is, but from, the pantheon of Babylon 5, he's not one of the main characters. But in my opinion, it's Zathras, and then everything else was pretty bad. But I don't know. Let me know. Will you still watch this film even after my glowing review, or did this turn you off from watching this film? Again, it's not because it's animated. I enjoyed many animated things, but it just felt like a Saturday morning cartoon version of Babylon 5. That's the best way for me to sum this up. Like, again, where they can't get all the voice actors back, so you have some voice actors that are the actual actors that play the characters, and then you have new people come in too, and the animation doesn't really match the characters that you saw on screen. And I was really disappointed. So let me know, will you still be seeing Babylon 5 The Road Home, or are you going to skip it, especially after my review? All right, so now let's talk about spoilers from the film if you have seen it, or if you just don't plan to see it and want to know what happens. So first, I'll go through the story, and the film starts a couple years after the end of the Shadow War, with John Sheridan leaving B5 for Minbar and Elizabeth Lockley taking command, which I thought was cool. I thought that was a good way to start it, because that's kind of how the show should have ended, and it's a good kind of like way to segue into a new adventure. So when the film first started, I was like, all right, this is probably going to be cool. So when Sheridan arrives in Minbar, he is present for a demonstration of a new machine that generates a power source, and then it sends him to the future. Now, this is one of my problems with this film, because they don't really explain why this is happening. Is it because he's John Sheridan? Is it because he's human and everybody else there is not? They just, like, John Sheridan says, what is this made out of? And they say tachyons, and he's like, oh boy. And then he starts getting sent to other places. That's really, I mean, we get a little bit more explanation later from a really weird character. But for me, I was just like, that they just glossed over that. They were just like, okay, we're doing a time travel story, and this is the way we're doing it, and we're not really going to worry about how we get there. So in Sheridan's first jump, he meets Dr. Stephen Franklin, and this is like 20 years after this event, and they figure out that Sheridan is slipping through different time periods and alternate universes, and that he needs to find Zathras. Before they can do anything else, John is sent to Earth on the day he took over B5 and spends some time with his father. He is then sent to the moment that was the catalyst for many of the events seen on B5, the awakening of the Shadows. Sheridan then jumps to a universe where he never took over B5, and Sinclair is the commander during the Shadow War. They work together with Garibaldi, Lyta, and G'Kar to destroy the station, which allows the survivors a chance to escape. Sheridan then jumps to his correct timeline and works with Lockley to find Zathras on the planet. When they get there, Zathras already knows what is happening and shares that there is now a whole race of Zathras called the Zathrai. I really like this. I was really not into the movie until this scene, and this scene kind of brought me back into it because seeing all the different Zathras, and again, I think they really nailed the dialogue for Zathras better than any other character. This scene got me back in the movie, and I was like, okay, second act, let's go. Let's do something great here. But it really didn't happen for me. So next, Sheridan jumps to an alternate universe where we lost the Shadow War, and Earth is destroyed by the Vorlons, who push the moon into the Earth and destroy it. This scene in particular for me was very underwhelming animated. I would have loved to have seen it in live action. I think it's a great idea to have an alien race push the moon into the Earth to destroy both. But seeing it animated, it was just really, I was like, oh, I would love to see this in live action. But yeah, just seeing it animated and then seeing these big waves come over and stuff, it's just oh my God, it would be so much better in live action. But anyway, back to the story. Then Sheridan jumps to a place called the Edge of the Universe and talks to a character that looks like G'Kar but is someone else. The character explains further to Sheridan what is going on and kind of explains in a roundabout way how he's the watcher of the universe or something and why this is happening to him. But honestly, I thought in a lot of ways the character that was embodied by G'Kar in the scene was supposed to be the embodiment of the series creator JMS in his own universe. So basically, this was John Sheridan speaking to JMS through G'Kar about Babylon 5 and his influence over this universe. This scene was all right, but again, I was just taken out of it so much by the way G'Kar looked. And in this scene in particular, it's G'Kar in this black space. So he really looks really bright. And that was the thing that was most off-putting for me about how G'Kar was drawn, is just he was so bright. And I don't remember that being the way he looked in live action. So this scene, again, it was kind of convoluted. It reminded me of that scene in The Matrix where he meets the architect and you see all these different screens of Neo and stuff. And he's explaining what's going on, but it still doesn't make any sense at all. That's pretty much what happens in this scene. But finally, Sheridan jumps to another alternate reality where the shadows were never awakened and Babylon 5 has seen only peace. While there, he's found by the Delenn from his own universe and they reunite. The film ends showing the crew from the alternate universe where the Shadow War did not happen, and Jeffrey Sinclair is the commander. So this is what was weird for me, because I didn't understand that this was basically a backdoor pilot for a new Babylon 5 reboot. And I think that that's kind of the plan with this movie. If there's enough interest that they would reboot Babylon 5 with these new voice actors in this new alternate universe. But it's not really clear, at the end of the film. You kind of expect it to end with Delenn and Sheridan together and fine and yada, yada, yada. But the last scene is in this new universe and, the character is narrating what is going on. So again, I was really confused, and it almost seemed to me the whole point of this film was just to set up a reboot. And that's kind of the way it moves along. That it's just trying to pull on your heartstrings for things that you liked in Babylon 5 and taking you back to moments that maybe you didn't see or maybe you forgot about, or different versions of a moment. And then it ends with Babylon 5 in a new universe. So it was really weird for me, and it just seemed really like it was to set up a reboot, which is probably not going to happen because I don't think this movie is very popular. And I also had a problem, again, with the very loose explanation of the plot. I don't really understand why this is happening to John Sheridan specifically, if he is the major player in this universe and that everything revolves around him, because now there's a younger John Sheridan in this other alternate universe that we're supposed to follow. So again, it's just very loose, and I guess it's just all there to set up this reboot that's never going to happen. And if they are trying to set up a reboot, I don't understand why they released this film in the manner that they did. Because according to JMS, this film has been done for a year, and that was way before the writers and actors strike. So releasing something now, it hurts the promotion of the film. And this film is only available as of releasing this podcast through digital download at $20 a pop, which at $20 a pop, if you're not a diehard Babylon 5 fan, are you going to pay $20 to watch a roughly hour-long animated Babylon 5 film? Hell no. Who would watch this movie that's not the biggest Babylon 5 fan? So I saw a lot of positive reviews, especially from people on Twitter, but I really think that that's because the only people seeing this movie are your die hard Babylon 5 fans, that will just like anything new because they just love Babylon 5. And that's fine. If you're like that, that's fine. I'm not casting aspersions. I'm just saying that that's why I think some of the early reviews have been a little more positive, because the only people seeing this are diehard Babylon 5 fans, because you have to pay $20 to watch it at home. So again, I think this whole film is a swing and a miss. I think the only purpose was to create like a backdoor pilot for a reboot, and I can't see this being popular enough to create that reboot. So just a big swing and a miss for me. But let me know in the comments, did you watch The Road Home? Did you enjoy it? Am I crazy? Are you going to recommend it to other people? Do you see my point of view? Or do you agree with me? Let me know in the comments below. Well, that is all I have this time, but let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Thank you once again for joining me today. Please do not forget to hit that like button if you have not yet, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss? Hey everyone, Eric here. Thanks for joining me, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. This was taken from my weekly podcast, WDIM News, which you can catch each Monday on this channel. If you would like to check out the full podcast, you can do so by clicking on this video here. Make sure that you not only hit the like button to help support me, but also hit the subscribe button so that you know when my new videos come out. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you next time on What Did I Miss?